In many minds, the beautiful country of Switzerland is linked with alpine pastures and grazing cows. But in the northeastern corner of the country, the textile trade has been an important employer for many centuries. The need to connect the mills with the markets was the driving force behind the formation of the Bodensee-Toggenburg railway, and much of the credit for the construction of the line can be given to Isidor Grauer-Frey, an embroidery manufacturer from Degesheim, who saw the advantages of linking northeastern Switzerland to the important Gotthard route. His idea was to connect the port of Hermanshorn and the textile towns of St. Gallen, Herisau and Vatfield with the existing line between Utsnacht and Rappersville, where connections could be made to Artgoldau on the Gotthard line. Today the Gotthard link is still important, though for passengers rather than goods, with the Voralpen Express making the connection between Lake Luzern and the Bodensee several times a day. This route involves a collaboration by 3 separate railway companies, the Südostbahn, the SBB and the Bodensee-Toggenburg, giving the chance to railway enthusiasts to spot a colourful range of locomotives and stock. We begin our journey at the beautiful old town of Rappersville, which lies on the northern shore of Lake Zürich. The waterfront is a popular place for a stroll, with the opportunity to take a trip along the lake, perhaps on one of the 2 surviving paddle steamboats, the graceful lines of which are a delight to see. The old town is dominated by the castle, built in the 13th century by the Count of Rapperswil on his return from the Crusades, and many of the picturesque streets below have houses dating back to the Middle Ages. Rappersville station, near the water's edge, is busy with trains from various companies, although the SBB is the biggest user, running frequent commuter trains to Zurich and the surrounding area. The southern and northern shores of the lake have been connected at this point since 1358, the original wooden bridge being replaced in the 19th century by a causeway carrying both road and rail connections. The first part of our journey will take us along the northern shore of the Obersee before passing through the Ricken tunnel to Vatfield. This is the oldest stretch of track along our journey, being opened in 1859 by the Vereinigte Schweizerbahnen as part of its route between Ruti and Glarus. It was absorbed into the newly formed Swiss Federal Railways in 1902, who are the present owners, although the BT and SOB have running rights. This region has been occupied for well over 2,000 years, Roman remains having been found near the water's edge. There's a scenic path along the lake shore between Rappersville and Ricken, providing a popular stroll during the summer months. Cyclists are also allowed to use the track, except on Sundays. The marshy area around the head of the lake is an important conservation site, containing over 400 rare botanical specimens, as well as a breeding colony of black-headed gulls. After Uznach, the track divides, with the original VSB line branching off to the right towards Siegelbrücke, where the connections can be made to Zürich or Chur. Planning began on the link from Uznach to Vatfield in 1889, but work did not start until 1903, and it was another 7 years before the first train made the connection. The major obstacle along the route was the Ricken Pass, and although an overland route was proposed, the decision was eventually taken to drive a tunnel through the heart of the mountain. At 8,603 meters, this is the 5th longest tunnel in Switzerland, only exceeded by the massive excavations of the Simplon, Furka, Gotthard and Lötschberg. Work began from either end in November 1903, and for the next few years steady progress was made. The breakthrough came 5 years later, and so accurately had the workers performed their task that the alignment was almost perfect. In 1926, tragedy struck when a cattle train stalled in the middle of the poorly ventilated tunnel, and carbon monoxide fumes asphyxiated the 9 crew members and many of the animals. It was a decisive factor in the electrification of this stretch of the line the following year. Vatfield is the junction with the line between Wil and Nesslau-Neu-St. Johann, a picturesque route into the heart of the Togenberg. The first tracks between Wil and Ebnat-Kapel were opened in 1870, coming under SBB control in 1902, and 10 years later the Bodensee-Toggenburg Railway extended the line from Ebnat to Nesslau. The line is thus partly owned by the SBB and partly by the BT, with the two companies running alternate services crossing at Vatfield. The villages of Nesslau and Neu-St. Johann, at the end of the track, lie in the heart of the Togenberg mountain region. The tranquility of this area attracted Benedictine monks in the 12th century, though today the region is more sought after as a year-round holiday centre. We take the BT train from Nesslau for the 12.5-kilometre journey to Vatfield. The handsome Baroque church of Neu-St. Johann, built in 1644, houses an 18th century organ. We make a gentle descent along the valley of the River Thur, losing 150 meters in height during the course of our journey. The Togenberg region is noted for its goats and cows, and an extremely tasty regional cheese can be found on sale in the local cheese shops. After Ebnat-Kapel, we join the SBB track. Although the line between Neslau and Vatfield was electrified in 1931, the section from Vatfield to Wiel remained in steam for another decade. On the edge of Vatfield station, the track doubles, being joined by the rails from Rappersville over which we rode earlier. The signalling system at Vatfield survives from earlier times, with the old levers still in operation for both signals and points, although electrical interlocking between the two updates the operation. Both Vatfield and Lichtensteig, the next station on the line, are SBB stations, which control both the Wiel-Neslau route as well as the Voralpen Expresses and BT trains. The line from Vatfield to Romenshorn was opened on the 1st of October 1910, having taken more than 5 years to build. Originally 20 trains a day ran along the route, but today the service has greatly increased. We've now joined the main BT tracks, which will take us for the remainder of our journey to Romenshorn. The SBB and BT tracks run in parallel for 2.5 kilometers before dividing just outside Lichtensteig station, with the SBB lines continuing to Wiel. The picturesque town of Liechtensteig, perched on cliffs above the River Thur, is a beautifully preserved reminder of an age before the railways. The town was founded in the 13th century, although most of the lovely old buildings which line its narrow streets date from some 4 centuries later. The main thoroughfare, with its tempting shops, has arcaded pavements which provide shelter from the weather as well as a safe haven for pedestrians. Liechtensteig is the chief town of the Togenberg, and the fine half-timbered buildings emphasize its importance as an administrative and judicial center. The elegant station building, which reflects the architectural style of the town, was rebuilt in 1910, when the Bodensee-Toggenburg opened their line, making Liechtensteig an important junction. After crossing the river, our line almost immediately enters the Wasserflue tunnel, taking the track deep under the mountain pass and linking Lichtensteig to Brunaden. This 3,500 metre excavation took 4.5 years to build. Local legend has it that the Lichtensteig choir, after spending a musical evening with their colleagues at Brunaden, decided to take a shortcut home through the tunnel, the last train having gone. On the way, they stopped to take advantage of the superb acoustics, but after finishing their songs, could not remember which way they'd come. In true Swiss tradition, they took a vote and continued on their chosen way, only to find themselves once more in Brunaden, from whence they had started. Our way lies along the steep sides of the Neckar River Valley, and the building of this section of the line proved a challenge to which the engineers responded magnificently. The Bodensee-Toggenburg network contains 16 tunnels and 91 viaducts, with a combined length of almost 10 kilometers, about a sixth of the length of the line. More per kilometer of track than any other railway in Switzerland. The majority of the viaducts are built of stone, blending harmoniously with the wooded landscape. Work is constantly carried out to ensure these structures are kept in good repair. At Degersheim station, a memorial to the earliest days of the line proudly stands beside the tracks. Number 6 was one of 9 EB35 locomotives bought from the German company J.A. Maffei of Munich for the opening of the line in 1910. In 1932, having run over 900,000 kilometers, she was sold to the Swiss Federal Railways, where she continued to work for a further 30 years. Her return to Degersheim in September 1965 meant an end to active service. Her sister, locomotive number 9, has also returned to her original haunts and is now the proud possession of the Herisau Steam Loco Club. Enjoying semi-retirement, she can now be found in steam on most weekends. This superheated locomotive carries 10 cubic meters of water and 3 tons of coal and has a fully laden weight of 74 tons. Paraffin-soaked cotton waste is used to ignite the fire, the smoke of which must be ducted out of the immaculately clean depot. coal is used to lay a hot bed, but briquettes must be loaded for use during the run. She's a favourite form of transport for special excursions, and several thematic carriages have been brought into service to give added pleasure to the passengers. Swiss weddings are grand events, with couples commonly chartering a special boat, charabanc or train to give a touch of nostalgia to the day. The gleaming old engine provides the perfect backdrop for that special photograph, with the locomotive sporting an outsized bouquet in honour of the event. Although Loco 9 was capable of speeds of up to 75 kilometers per hour in her prime, her age, she's now over 80 years old, necessitates a slightly more sedate speed. So the revellers are in no danger of spilling their drinks over their wedding finery. While the footplate crew are hard at work, the lucky guests are able to relax in comfort in the special coaches, which include a rustic alpine hut complete with enormous cowbells which make their own music in time to the motion of the train. Our way continues from Degersheim towards the textile towns of Herisau and St. Gallen. Degersheim, at just under 800 meters, is the highest station on the whole line, and from here we will gently descend 400 meters to journey's end at Hermanshorn. The track emerges from the Bulberg tunnel directly onto the graceful Weisenbach viaduct, whose 13 stone arches combine to form a total length of 282 meters, bearing the track 64 meters above the valley floor. This bridge spans the boundary between the cantons of St. Gallen and Appenzell. Herisau is one of the capitals of Canton Appenzell and an important textile town. The Glattal viaduct takes the track for 296 meters on a series of graceful stone arches above the mills which line the valley floor. The 90-meter-long Mouleboul tunnel takes us beneath the town into Herisau station. Herisau has not one, but two stations, for this is also an important stop on the Appenzell Railway, and both companies have extensive sheds and sidings here. The Bodensee-Toggenburg depot, on the outskirts of the station, is the main workshop for the line, and the 60 employees here are kept busy looking after the fleet. Train wheels take heavy wear during the course of the year, and their metal tyres must be replaced when worn. The process of retiring is a skilled job, and the Bodensee-Toggenburg not only recondition its own wheels, but also provides this service for the Appenzell Railway Group. After the worn tyres have been cut off, new ones are heat shrunk onto the wheel hubs and turned to the correct profile. The finished wheel sets are now ready to be rolled through into the main workshop for fitting onto the refurbished bogies. Electrification of the line took place in the early 1930s, and the Bodensee-Toggenburg company bought 6 BE44 locomotives from SLM with electrical apparatus by Sécheron of Geneva. These were numbered 11 to 16 and were the first Swiss bogie locomotives. These weigh 62 tons and are capable of speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. 3 survive and are used today for light duties. The trains which now operate the local services are the BDE44 sets dating from the 1960s, and the 6 RBDE44 sets, one of which is taking us on our journey. The latest additions to the BT stable are the 6 RE44 three-phase engines which came into service in the late 1980s. These powerful workhorses have maximum speeds of 130 kilometers per hour, twice that of the original steam locomotives. Loco 95 joined a sister from the SZU at the celebrations on the Emmental Railway in 1993, when their second series locomotives were delivered. The mother greets daughter sign is a playful allusion to the seniority of the BT engines. The RE44 locomotives, like all the modern BT trains, are named after villages and towns along the route, and bear the relevant emblems and cantonal flags. After Herisau, our route passes from Canton Appenzell back into Canton St. Gallen, across the deep gorge of the River Sitter. The original line beyond Herisau towards St. Gallen was a meter gauge track belonging to the Appenzell Railway Company. Opened in 1875, it connected at Winkeln with the main route between Winterthur and St. Gallen. However, with the building of the Bodensee-Toggenburg line, the Appenzellbahn abandoned its track and instead made an extension to Gossau to remake the connection with the Swiss Federal Railways further up the valley. The Gubsensee Reservoir is not only a local beauty spot, but also part of the hydroelectric power plant, which is situated in the Sitter Valley, almost 100 meters below. The Stürzenegg Tunnel brings us out onto one of the most imposing railway bridges in the whole of the country. The Sitter Viaduct, the highest in Switzerland, carries the track over 99 meters above the riverbed, on a series of stone arches and a central girder section which alone measures 120 meters. The 11 pillars, which were designed to withstand the immense loads, were built from stone specially imported from Graubünden. This amazing structure, totaling 365 meters in length, took 3 years to build, with a small army of masons employed to construct the sturdy pillars on either bank of the river. The central steel girder was assembled in situ on an imposing wooden scaffolding with a travelling crane running on top of the span itself to aid the difficult task of construction. The specialist craftsmen who worked on the fabrication had an arduous 100-meter climb each day, even before starting work. The completed span was carefully lowered into place using an ingenious lost sand mechanism which took into account the ruling gradient of 1 in 62. The only traces of the scaffolding which survive are the concrete and masonry foundations remaining in the riverbed at the foot of the viaduct. 2 years after the bridge's completion, a movement of 200 millimeters at the top of each of the 2 central piers was measured, and this had reached the alarming shift of 270 millimeters by 1921. A technical survey concluded that the best method of stabilizing the bridge was to use a special apparatus attached to the main pier at the Herisau end. This applied an effective lateral force of 182 tons to that pier and an equal force through the girder onto the other main pier at the St. Gallen side. In this way, the use of a relatively small weight, amplified by levers, successfully controls the movement of the main columns. Strengthening work on the pillars was carried out during the 1960s and 70s, with a variety of different methods being employed to reinforce the columns, including the application of supporting bands and concrete cladding. The central girder has also needed attention over the decades, and frequent maintenance inspections are carried out from inside the structure itself. Because of the increase in traffic and axle loadings, additional steelwork was added in the early 1980s to bring the bridge up to European mainline specifications. The original covered wooden bridge still remains at the foot of the viaduct, now dwarfed by the pillars of the newer construction, which is one of 6 major bridges which cross the gorge along this stretch of the river. The neighbouring bridge also carries a railway track, the SBB main line between St. Gallen and Winterthur. We've now passed back into the canton of St. Gallen, whose chief city of the same name has been a major centre since early times. A monastic settlement was founded here in the 7th century by St. Gallus, an Irish monk, and this rapidly became one of the premier centres of learning in the whole of Europe. Today, it's a flourishing industrial centre, and the suburbs have spread over a large area to house the growing population who live and work here. The first trains reached St. Gallen at the early date of 1856, when the St. Gallische Appenzellische Eisenbahn extended their network across northeastern Switzerland. This company was taken over the following year by the VSB, which became part of the newly formed Swiss Federal Railways in 1902. St. Gallen station is a magnificent building. Rebuilt at the beginning of the 20th century, it's home to both SBB and Bodensee-Toggenburg standard gauge trains. The complex also has meter gauge tracks serving two other companies. The Appenzell Railway Group has a network of lines running through its canton. Their colourful red trains have given a much appreciated service to both tourists and the local population for well over a century. The little orange rail cars of the Trogenerbahn are a colourful sight on their 10-kilometre route through city and countryside. They run on 600 volts within the city boundaries to be compatible with the trolleybuses, but require increased voltage for the uphill climb through the suburbs. The first trams ran in St. Gallen at the end of the 1890s and were joined in 1903 by the Trogenerbahn, which in those days terminated at the Brühltor at the other end of the city. The two companies finally amalgamated in the 1950s to give one through service. The track utilizes gradients of up to 1 in 13 in order to gain the 287 meters in height needed to reach the summit of the line, before gently descending to its terminus at the mountain resort of Trogen. St. Gallen is a bustling city whose picturesque cloister quarter proves a major tourist attraction. However, it's also a commercial center, and much of its wealth comes from the thriving textile trade, which has been a feature of the region for centuries. The Textile Museum and Library house an extensive collection of fabrics, patterns and associated manuscripts, which are a feast for the eyes, as well as an invaluable reference collection for students and professionals alike. The manufacture of cloth has taken place in this area of Switzerland since medieval times, when the fine linen woven by local nuns was in demand throughout Europe. This was later superseded by lace making and embroidery, for which the region became equally famous. This beautiful lace cloth was made as a demonstration of Swiss craftsmanship for the great exhibition held in Hyde Park, London in 1851, and bears the British royal coat of arms. By the end of the 19th century, approximately half of the workforce of St. Gallen was employed in the textile trade, either working from home or in one of the town's factories. The old Einstein mill, which opened in 1830 to produce embroidered fabrics, is still owned by a textile company. However, in the 1980s, it underwent a complete conversion, and today is one of the premier hotels of Switzerland, with an elegant penthouse restaurant situated in what was formerly the storage loft. Although some of the old works have now gone, St. Gallen still has a flourishing textile trade, even though the factories nowadays look more like executive offices than mills. Here, beautiful fabrics are created for clothing companies all over the world, including the British clothes chain Marks & Spencer. Exotic creations are designed for top couturiers, such as Valentino and Yves Saint Laurent, and these intricate materials with their embroidery, sequins and jewels must be handled with loving care at all stages of the work. The result is a delight to behold and an inspiration to designers the world over, who will turn these sumptuous fabrics into glamorous creations to adorn some of the world's most beautiful women. Our journey from St. Gallen now takes us down through the rolling plains of the Thurgau region to the shores of the Bodensee. Almost immediately outside the station, the Rosenberg Tunnel, built 2 years after the opening of the line, takes the track for almost 1,500 meters under the city streets into the station at Saint-Fiden, a suburb of St. Gallen. Our track runs beside the line to Roschach, which swings under our rails to continue eastwards towards the Rhine Valley and Austria. The Brugwald Tunnel, at 1,731 meters, is the third longest along our route. It took more than 18 months to construct. We now leave the canton of St. Gallen and pass into Canton Thurgau. The railway runs close to the cantonal boundary, and we will pass between these two counties several times during the remainder of our journey. This area of Switzerland is an important fruit-growing region, and the orchards in spring are a glorious sight with blossom-laden trees, while autumn brings a rich harvest of apples and pears. We're now approaching the Bodensee, Switzerland's second largest lake, better known to English and North American visitors as Lake Constance. This stretch of water forms the boundary between three European countries, Switzerland, Germany and Austria. The railway does not take the direct line down to the lake, but meanders along the hillside, serving stations in each village to give a greatly appreciated and well-used facility to the local population. Journey's end is at Romanshorn, where the large station is not only the terminus of the Bodensee-Toggenburg line, but also a major junction along a diversity of SBB routes. This was one of the earliest railway stations in Switzerland, opened in 1855, when the Nordostbahn inaugurated a line between Winterthur and Romenshorn. The signal semaphore arms, a relic of the early days, still play a vital part in the control of trains on the approaches to the station. Romenshorn station, situated on the water's edge, is only a short step away from the ferries with which the trains connect. This is the largest Swiss port on the Bodensee, with ferries coming and going at regular intervals. These ferries are partly owned by the Swiss Federal Railways, who've been operating passenger boats on the lake since 1902, together with its fleet. This lovely expanse of water is not really a lake, but rather a widening of the River Rhine, where a glacier gouged out a large basin during the Ice Age. Between the sparkling waters of the Bodensee and the charming shoreline of Lake Zürich, the scenic ride along the Bodensee-Toggenburg gives an unparalleled panorama through northeastern Switzerland.